Hello, this is David Schlesinger, together with Elizabeth Tino, Pranvi Parekh, James Pittman, and Brett McQuaid. We are Group 8, and we are going to be talking about MGM. MGM is a Fortune 500 company. We're going to be looking at their SWOT and their business and corporate strategies, and we're going to be making a few proposals that we think are relevant for MGM. Let's start with a little history on MGM. Everybody is probably familiar with the fact that Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer is a film studio. And what people may not realize is that MGM Resorts grew out of the film studios in 1969. Their controlling owner at the time, a fellow by the name of Kirk Kerkorian, opened the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas in 1973. That hotel, by the way, now became Bally's, but they reopened a new hotel called the MGM Grand in 1978, and their primary goal was to be a gaming company, with hotels being the venue for their casinos. Subsequently, in the 1980s and the 90s, MGM moved its headquarters to Las Vegas and began to significantly expand its gaming business. Their flagship property, the MGM Grand, in its current state, started in 1991. They merged with Mirage Resorts in 2000 and expanded their portfolio with a whole lot of other properties. MGM's current portfolio includes 15 resorts in Las Vegas, and among them, as we mentioned, the MGM Grand, the Bellagio, the Mirage, Luxor, and the Mandalay Bay. They own other resorts outside Las Vegas, or they're in partnerships with resorts such as the MGM Grand Detroit. They have properties in Reno and Biloxi, Mississippi, and the Gold Strike casinos in Tunica, Mississippi, and Jean, Nevada. They have several international ventures. Now, we're going to be talking about these international ventures a little bit later on because this is a very, very key part of their growth strategy. And as far as their domestic pipeline, they're working on the MGM National Harbor in Maryland and the MGM AEG Arena in Paradise, Nevada. MGM's organization is an M-form organization, meaning that they have separate organizations for the key properties and for their regions. But at the corporate level, MGM is led by a group of very, very seasoned gaming professionals. At the helm is James Murren, who is the CEO. He's been with MGM since 1998. He's served in the role of COO, CFO, and he's been the CEO for the past 6 years. He was responsible for $15 billion in acquisitions, including the Mandalay Bay and Mirage Resort groups. He's supported by William Hornbuckle, who is the president. Now, he has a strong marketing background. He's been the chief marketing officer since 2009 and became the president in 2012. He provides strategic oversight in all the marketing functions and all the joint venture operations, especially with MGM in Macau, as we're going to see later. And we'll probably touch on this several times, that this is a key part. The international strategy is a key part of their overall growth. Daniel Dorigo is their CFO. Corey Sanders is their COO. Just very quickly point out who their major shareholders are. Paulson & Company, Capital World Investors, and Vanguard are the top 3 investors, and they also have a number of mutual funds. But as you can see, the ownership is fairly well distributed. This list gets pretty long once we get below the 2 and 3% stakeholders. MGM, of course, is a publicly traded company. Now let's take a minute or two to look at some key aspects of MGM's financial data. As we mentioned before, MGM is a Fortune 500 company. They're actually number 292 on the list with annual sales above $9 billion. However, something that's very important to point out is that liabilities make up over 80% of their assets. In addition to this high level of liability, which is really a leverage challenge, MGM has close to $3 billion in goodwill on their books, and this is after they've already taken several $billion in goodwill impairments over the past 3 years. And it is reasonable to expect that they're going to have to take more impairments over the next couple of years. If you look at their recent earnings by quarter, you can see going through the most recently reported quarter at the end of Q3 2012, going back for a year, you can see steady earnings, sometimes increasing, but certainly steady and very strong. However, if we took a look at their balance sheet, we're going to see that $21.4 billion in total liabilities as compared to $25.7 billion in total assets. More importantly, if we take a look at the long-term debt maturity, while $537 million is due this year. Next year, they've got a huge debt payment of nearly $2.4 billion, followed by another one in 2016 of 1.6 billion and 2.2 in 2017. This is a fair amount of debt, and they're going to either have to restructure some of that debt, or they may take a look at some of the strategies that we're going to recommend later in this presentation for dealing with their debt. As a brief introduction to the five forces and BRIO model, let's take a quick look at MGM's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Among their strengths are the fact that they are a large capitalization corporation, second largest gaming company worldwide, and MGM, as in terms of their flagship brand, is very well known. However, as we've already pointed out, they're looking at a tremendous amount of debt. Their concentration in Las Vegas is very, very high, which means that as the Las Vegas market goes, that can have a significant impact on MGM's business. And outside of the MGM brand, with all their other properties, there's not a clear, perceptible branding strategy. In terms of opportunities and threats, we've listed international as their main opportunity, and we'll be talking more about that later on. But you'll notice that we've listed online gaming as both an opportunity and a threat. And that's because if they get into the online gaming business, they'll be able to co-opt this growing trend, but if they don't, that could be a threat to their in-person business. Finally, as we mentioned before, because of their concentration in Las Vegas, their threat relates to a drop in Las Vegas tourism. So now I'm going to turn things over to Pranvi and Elizabeth, who are going to discuss the five forces model.
My name is Pranvi Parag. Next, we will visit the five forces model in respect to MGM. I will start with the threat of entry. There are many aspects to look at in regard to how simple or difficult it may be to enter a market. For the gaming industry, we chose to look at emerging markets, exit barriers, government regulations, and capital requirements. We found that there are many emerging markets in the world for this industry, making demand high and more space for entrants. Exit barriers are low, which drives out obsolete firms. Government regulation is an important barrier to consider. The gaming industry is highly regulated and differently regulated throughout the world. Knowing and being able to apply proper rules and regulations can be a difficult task. MGM has managed to overcome these difficulties and has expanded to locations such as China and Singapore. Capital requirement is the most difficult threat of entry to overcome in this industry. The next threat I will touch on is the threat of suppliers. Supplier power is low from the hospitality standpoint, things such as food, sheets, and drinks. This threat is low overall because there is high competition among suppliers. There are a large number of substitute inputs, and the cost of switching suppliers is low. Supplier power is high for the casino/gaming standpoint. There are few suppliers, but these suppliers are large companies and their products are essential for MGM. This makes up competition between suppliers, and it allows suppliers to keep prices up because there are fewer suppliers in the industry.
My name is Elizabeth McIntyre, and I'll explain the remaining five forces. This slide covers the threat of customers. MGM properties in Las Vegas are dependent upon Las Vegas tourism. As you can see on the slide, tourists are spending less time gambling. Also, customers say that they are more likely to visit other places besides Las Vegas when they want to gamble. Compared to 2008, customers are spending more money on shopping. There has also been a decrease in advanced planning since 2008. This trend reflects Las Vegas' popularity with tourists dropping. Now it's more of a last-minute trip versus one you plan months in advance. The next topic is on the threat of rivalry and substitutes. The level of rivalry between Las Vegas properties is high. There are many competing firms which are listed here. Many of these firms compete on price cutting and most utilize intense advertising. Caesars is the main rival to MGM in Las Vegas. MGM advertising includes use of their M-Life loyalty program as well as online free slot play for rewards through Facebook. Caesars utilizes similar loyalty and social networking programs. Rivalry continues on this slide. North America has more gambling than other areas of the world, but the growth has slowed since 2008. However, growth outside the United States has increased. The final area of consideration for rivalry is product differentiation. Casino properties are mainly differentiated by price point and guest preference. The threat of substitutes includes those for gambling, vacations, and conventions, all three of which are popular in Las Vegas. The most substantial substitute is cruises, because each of the three can be filled on a cruise, as more and more cruise ships offer dining, entertainment at no additional cost, and also the opportunity to gamble. James will now explain the VRIO for MGM Grand.
This is James Pittman. I will be covering the VRIO analysis. MGM has an extensive portfolio of casino resorts. These iconic properties have an existing consumer base, and they have real estate licenses for both gaming by machine and table gaming, which in of itself is a limited resource. More importantly, MGM has prime locations on the Las Vegas Strip. These are arguably some of the most impressive sets of real estate holdings of anyone on the Las Vegas Strip. This is a tremendous advantage since the Strip is the largest gaming area in the U.S. based on annual revenue. There is also a very limited amount of available real estate space in that area. Beyond the physical real estate, MGM has built an impressive series of brands. Several of these brands are lifestyle and luxury brands which appeal to consumer segments with expendable incomes. MGM has a large resource in their team of experienced gaming executives, being one of the largest gaming companies in the world. They also have an extremely large number of experienced gaming executives, which are a rare commodity. Additionally, they have a tremendous pool of skilled gaming workers. This includes not only the more traditional roles one might think of, like table dealers and pit bosses, but also specialized services such as gaming equipment maintenance and repair and gaming revenue management. Revenue management is a practice that's very important in the hotel and travel industry, as it is focused on setting pricing and availability controls in order to get the optimal amount of revenue for a corporation. And this is all the more complex for gaming, as you have to monitor the actual play of the gamers and the table limits, as well as traditional attributes of hotel inventory. The MGM company also has an extensive amount of leverage with gaming equipment suppliers. As one of the largest gaming companies, MGM can position themselves to negotiate the very best discounts available for gaming equipment. The M Life loyalty program is one of the largest gaming loyalty programs in the world. It's got a tremendous membership base and a great amount of insight on those members. Maintaining a current member for a program like this is far cheaper than acquiring new members, so just having that tremendous base of frequent players to which they can market and which they have a lot of insights on is a tremendous asset. Their distribution of properties really offers an advantage to the players and makes them appealing, as it gives them a variety of properties to use their points at. And additionally, partnerships with other companies and other loyalty programs, such as airline companies, allow them to use their points in other ways. MGM has entered the gaming markets in China with two properties. The MGM Grand Paradise in Macau, in particular, has experienced double-digit growth over the last 3 years, and that market is expected to continue to be an opportunity area for the organization. In terms of financial resources, MGM has a tremendous amount of debt, with a current market capitalization of $13.58 billion and total liabilities of $13.45 billion. The $2.3 billion of debt is set to mature in 2015. Due to this tremendous amount of debt and write-downs, MGM recorded a per-share loss of 32 cents per share in 2013. Now Brett will summarize the VRIO analysis.
James, thanks for the review of MGM's major resources and capabilities. Hi, this is Brett, and I will now take you through the aforementioned resources and capabilities and put them through the VRIO analysis. First, let's look at MGM's gaming real estate. MGM owns 9 different casinos and a golf course in Las Vegas, which total up to be about 840 acres. This has been used to back approximately $3.35 billion in MGM's debt. So obviously there's quite a bit of value there. MGM also owns another 70 acres in Nevada, which is primarily near Reno and holds gambling and hotels. They own 1,982 total acres domestically that they plan to use for future gaming locations. A few of those are actually current gaming locations outside of the Vegas area. The current Macau casino, which is in China, sits on 10 acres. So are these locations of value? Yes, absolutely. Are they rare? Yes, they are, because as far as I know, nobody's making land anymore. They are costly to imitate, and MGM has done a good job in exploiting them. So we see these as a strength and something that gives MGM a sustained competitive advantage. The Las Vegas concentration. The land and facilities in Vegas may be of value, but the fact that MGM garners more than 50% of their total revenue from just the casinos in Vegas, we find to be problematic. So what we think needs to be done is that they are of value, but they're not rare. Obviously, there's other gambling companies in Las Vegas. So we see this as a weakness and believe that MGM needs to diversify their revenue stream geographically. The brand equity. The MGM name is well known. It harks all the way back to 1924 when Marcus Lowe combined Metro, Goldwyn, and Mayer into a single movie production firm. Kirk Kerkorian actually bought a controlling stake in MGM in 1969, and in 1973 is when he built the MGM Grand Hotel Casino. So that's when MGM initially started into the gambling business. Now, of course, now the production studio and the gambling company are no longer linked, but the brand is still very renowned. So the brand is valuable, it's rare, it would be costly to imitate, and the company does a good job of exploiting it. So we see the MGM brand as a strength and one that provides sustained competitive advantage. Socially complex resources. In regards to socially complex resources, MGM does have, of course, the executives and the managers, the pit bosses, and the staff to run their hotels and their casinos. But we don't believe these resources offer more than just competitive parity in regards to MGM and their competition. The supplier leverage. MGM does have some leverage, obviously, on their suppliers because of just their total size. So that said, though, there are other very large hotels and casinos that command the same type of leverage, and there are plenty of subcontractors and suppliers that would like to do business with MGM and the other firms. So again, this is a valuable resource, but MGM is really not competing or generating profit primarily on discount pricing. So MGM does not have a desire to be a price leader per se. So given their business model, the supplier leverage provides, we think, competitive parity at best. The M-Life loyalty program. Now this is a different story. The customer loyalty program is a broad-based program that recognizes and rewards customer spending across many different channels within the MGM resorts and casinos and hotels. So when you gamble, you buy food, you pay for entertainment, you pay for your room, etc. All that data is collected, and that data that's collected in the M-Life program is used to identify customer preferences, predict their future customer spending and behavior, generate relevant offers to customers. They use it to influence the number of times they can get customers to come out and stay in the hotels. And really what this data is used for is to build some lasting relationships. So the loyalty program is very valuable. It is rare in its size and its scope. It's very costly to imitate, and MGM uses it to their advantage. So we see this as a sustained competitive advantage. The international operations. As I had already said, there is a hotel in Macau, China. And MGM actually owns 51% of a company called MGM China. It's between MGM and the Chinese government. So the operation holds a great deal of value and rarity, as only 5 other operators have been given licenses to operate in Macau, which is now the gambling mecca of the world. In 2013, Las Vegas did $6.4 billion in gambling revenues. Atlantic City did $3.05 billion. Macau generated $45.2 billion in gambling revenues. So This location has become a competitive advantage for MGM over any other gambling firm that does not have a casino in Macau. And then finally, we have the financial resources. We find this to be the most worrisome of MGM's resources is its financial resources. MGM has nearly as much debt as it has in capitalized market value, and for that reason, we see MGM's financial resources as a weakness.
It's Elizabeth again. The next section we'll cover is business strategies of MGM. With regard to differentiation strategies, cost leadership is not an effective strategy because they need to offer brands for both upscale and budget-friendly guests. Collusion is also not a differentiation strategy for MGM due to the very nature of the hospitality industry. The chart on this slide was created to group the different Las Vegas MGM properties into different price points: budget, mid-level, and high roller or premium properties. Items such as room amenities, diamond ratings, price, dining options, and shows were used to assign price point to each property. Within these segments, the premium properties are highly differentiated. However, the mid and lower level properties are not, which makes them easier to imitate as well as compete against one another. The last differentiation slide shows MGM properties outside Las Vegas. These include Detroit, Biloxi, Reno, and Tunica within the U.S., as well as China is their only international property. Brett will now discuss the other MGM business strategies.
Thanks, Elizabeth. This is Brett again, and I'm going to continue the business strategies with the flexibility strategies. Just to go over those real quick, there's 6 different flexibility strategies or 6 different options that firms can use in order to stay flexible. So examples of this would be the option to defer, which would be like a company leasing land instead of purchasing it. They can defer the actual purchase until some later point, depending upon the value that they find in the land. The option to grow, you build a company or you build a manufacturing firm that's large enough for you to be able to expand in future years. The option to contract would be using temporary labor that you can eliminate easily if the company gets smaller. The option to shut down and restart. You have the option to abandon. So you start a manufacturing firm, but you use general equipment that you can easily sell if you need to shut down the factory. And finally, the option to expand, which was like a firm invests in one product with the understanding that that investment in that product may lead to the creation of additional products to generate more revenue. So those are 6 different options for flexibility strategies. So let's take a look and see how MGM is using flexibility strategies. First is the land option. We believe actually that MGM has done a nice job of using the option to defer with its land ownership. It owns multiple properties, which you can see here, on which it has withheld development. Some of those are worth quite a bit of money. MGM has adopted the option to abandon and the option to expand by creating partnerships to develop and manage a variety of its different properties. This enables MGM to share the development costs and also dilute its own risks in developing and managing these different facilities. MGM's Macau operation in China is a partnership, and so will the Cotai Casino and Hotel also be a partnership. The partnership is necessary for MGM to do business in China, but these partnerships also give MGM the option to expand and options to grow as the market matures in China. So if China would not, or if MGM would not have partnered with Chinese government and built the Macau resort, it's highly unlikely that they would have gotten the opportunity to do the upcoming resort in Cotai. So that option to expand came from their choice of going in to Macau. Then we have the casinos themselves. So within each casino, MGM utilizes the option to expand and the option to grow and how it organizes its casino floors and eateries. So it gives each area a larger or smaller percentage of total square footage depending upon which of those areas is generating the highest or most consistent amount of revenue. And when we look at the flexibility strategies that MGM has been using, we actually think that MGM could be more flexible and would have more flexibility options if they weren't so highly leveraged. So if MGM could work to reduce the amount of debt that they carry, we think that these flexibility strategies would be even a better option for them to use in the future.